And just tell me when for the recording.
Go. Okay, you can start, Katie.
Oh, sorry. So hi, thank you very much, everybody, for still being here. I'm going to talk about the development of Romano-British disc brooches. Just as a bit of an introduction, this is an ongoing research. I started this for my MA dissertation at Newcastle University, and it's turned into our independent project where I'm looking at disc brooches throughout the Roman period and into the early medieval period. Hopefully I can bring you something new. I'm going to go over what's been done with disc brooches before, where I'm going to go next, and using the examples from Northern Britain to show the wider brooch use throughout Roman Britain. So why did I look at this? So I'm looking at Roman and early medieval disc brooches. Similar in form and design. Early medieval disc brooches date from the 5th and 6th century AD. Said to have origins in the Romano-British disc brooch series. They're quite similar in design and form, but they're dated a few centuries apart. When E.T. Leeds in 1945 was looking at the early medieval disc brooches in furnished burials of southern Britain, he noticed that they looked quite similar to the 2nd century Roman enameled version. Tanya Dickinson in the 70s looked a bit further into this and saw that some of the early medieval brooches looked quite similar to the Romano-British disc brooches of the later 3rd and 4th century. And what my research was trying to do was trying to bridge that gap, try to see if there were any typological or chronological kind of connections between these two disc brooch series. Hopefully I can do that in this talk, we'll see. Need to do a bit of an overview of the types of Roman disc brooches that I've been looking at. So firstly, the enamel type. They're fairly common finds and fairly recognisable. They are cast copper alloy plates with copper alloy pins and brightly coloured enamelled designs. We'll get quite a variety of designs in quite the same colours, but they are all cast copper alloy with a reserved metal and inlaid with enamel. And they quite often have a white metal finish to give it quite a silvery appeal. So they're quite recognisable, quite showy, quite flashy, but they're quite small. They're only about like 2 to 4 centimetre in diameter. You'll notice I haven't put many measurements or scales on these slides as I go through because they are fairly the same size, between 2 and 4 centimetres. These appear in post-conquest, set to date generally to the 2nd century. From the Iron Age, we get simple bow brooches, and when Roman occupation, we get a whole, what's termed an explosion of different brooch types. These ones are a Roman form of the flat disc brooch shape, but they're said to keep quite a native aspect with the enamelled designs representing a hangover from the Iron Age. These are designs that appeal to the native population at the time. These are because of the designs, and I must say that there's quite a lot of variation between the designs, but they could be described as being the same sunburst design. So from a simple star to a hex foil, a sex foil, to concentric bands of enamel. They've got this feeling of a sunburst, and to the quite well known, the Triscally. And so there's been lots of work done with these and try to typologize them. McCress has typologized them to many different subgroups and groups, but I've tried to lump them all together into the enameled version with this variation of the sunburst design. As they are quite small and as they are quite unusual to keep that design element, it's been said that they're meant to be seen close up, so it's meant to be like maybe a badge of identity, maybe a badge of affiliation. So you go to see somebody, you see this little design on them, you know that you're among friends. But I'll go on to talk a bit more about the significance of that design. The type develops, the disc-brooch type develops from the 2nd century enamel type into the gilded type. And in the later Roman period, we don't get as many new forms of brooches. We don't get as many, the brooch use seems to decline. Sorry, the types of brooch use seems to decline. And we get the gilded type, the disc brooch. We have a cast copper plate with a copper alloy pin, but these are gilded on the front, and have the white metal finish on the reverse, gilding on the front, and they have concentric bands of decoration. Again, it's sort of a variation of the sunburst design, but it's surrounding a black central conical central setting. These are again about 3 to 4 centimeters on diameter on average, and the fact that we get different brooch use in the later period reflects possible changes in fashions or ideologies. Maybe the designs of the enameled versions weren't as accepted or used in the later period. They weren't as appropriate. To assess the development of disc brooches, I started looking at the disc brooches on dated contexts. We don't have any manufacturing evidence for these brooches. We don't have any workshop sites or any evidence that they were made, but because of the common frequency they are found in Roman Britain, said to be made in Britain. Dating is difficult because dating differs by area. In the north, Margaret Snape looked at the brooches on the Staingate and found that there were lots of earlier brooches, but considered they were survival and use was more the case, rather than these brooches were coming up through any other means, that they were still being used. So I looked at the dated context from enameled Roman disc brooches. Brooches are also durable objects. They could be kept as heirlooms. They could be passed around because they're valued objects. They could be pretty things that you keep in your drawer for a while and then you get back out. They could be curated for all sorts of reasons. So when I looked at the dated context out of hundreds of brooches, there weren't that many securely dated contexts. There was only about 30. But I did find that they appeared from the latest 1st century all the way through to the latest deposits at Wroxeter. This, perhaps on the face of it, suggests that they were in circulation for a long time. I wasn't too concerned about the state of the brooch. I was looking at how what dated deposits were they found? Were they, so, and looking at the brooches from Northern Britain, you can see they were found in definitely in a range of different contexts. They are found in fort occupations, dating from the earliest 1st century, suggesting that they possibly they were worn in forts. They were also found in metalworking sites. This one in forts. The ones from Housesteads that dated to the 2nd to 3rd century were from the ramparts, which had evidence of metalworking. So perhaps these brooches were kept for recycling purposes, a scrap metal, or maybe they were being kept to be repaired. And there was one from Coventina as well, from the late 2nd to 3rd century. Ritual deposits. Maybe brooches were kept to be deposited on a special occasion. Maybe it meant something to keep something, to keep this brooch deposit down the well. But as I was looking at all the different types of contacts and the different types of brooches that come up, I noticed that the same designs were coming up. And the latest brooch that I found in a dated context was a one from Roxeter. The description of this, I couldn't find a picture, but was a description of an enamel brooch, was a central cell surrounded by 2 others of enamel. The inner band has a series of reserved circular spots. So this sounds very much like the one found in some of the earliest deposits in Newstead. And this suggests that it's not just enameled brooches that are coming up across the Roman period. It's the same sort of similar design. It suggests the longevity of the same designs. The fact that these are common and popular brooches, maybe it was the same ones that were being reproduced, being reused. These simple but striking designs were still significant to be used for quite a long time. And so I started focusing in on the frontier, on Northern Britain, and trying to find evidence of brooch use to maybe find some reason why these brooches were significant. These enamelled brooches with the same designs, why might they be used for so long? We don't have much evidence from the frontier, as far as I can see. We have a tombstone, which is now in the Great North Museum, but a tombstone of a British civilian wearing a lovely cape, and the cape, wearing a lovely cloak, and the cloak is attached on the shoulder with a big brooch. We have the reconstruction of the Caribou Mithraeum. It shows Mithras slaying the bull, and he's got his cloak attached by the big gold brooch on his shoulder. And these are what these brooches are said to that's their use. The disc brooches attach a cloak at the shoulder. Imperial brooch seen on coins, emperor depictions, always seen with a cloak attached at the shoulder with a disc brooch. And so these Romano-British enameled versions, little imitations of these imperial brooches. However, the tombstone of the civilian, even though it says that you'd have a Romano-British disc brooch, it was probably painted at the time, and the fact that this civilian has a tombstone with his own depiction means he's probably very wealthy. He probably was imitating the big gold imperial disc brooches. It's unlikely, or maybe somebody might not be likely, that it was a painted Romano-British enamelled disc brooch. But we can look at what was happening, what was the frontier fashions at the time, perhaps. And enamel itself is said to be a frontier fashion. We have the lovely dragoness brooches, which have more of a northern distribution. And we have the souvenir pans from Hadrian's Wall, enamelled and dated to the 2nd century due to the enamel. Due to the fact that enamel was more popular in the 2nd century, perhaps enamel was the decoration of choice for these people in the frontier who are still kind of clinging on to their native aspect and their British aspect in the face of the Roman occupation. However, when you look on portable antiquity scheme, enamel brooches you find across the province. Perhaps it then turned from a frontier fashion into a more wider spread Romano-British identity. Well, I've been looking at the portable antiquities scheme. This is really useful to look at the types and the distributions. I try to focus in more on Hadrian's Wall and the northeast and Cumbria. I found a few examples from Scotland. However, England's got the benefit of the portable antiquities scheme, so I try to really hone in and look at the distributions of disc brooches within the frontier. What I found was the disc brooch distribution is a bit different. On the face of it, looking from the disc brooches that I found from sites and the ones from the portable antiquities scheme, do get a lot more in the west. There is the possibility that we don't get as many metal detected finds from the portable antiquity scheme due to the fact that it's a scheduled monument. There's not as much metal detecting as there is in the rest of the country. But looking at the sites that I've looked at and the portable antiquities, we'll see a definite distribution of disc brooches more towards the west. Compared to different types of brooches compared to the trumpet brooches and head studs, which have a more eastern kind of feel. So perhaps there's more of a regional preference in the west or along the wall to use disc brooches. Maybe the patterns and the designs did show them, did have some type of significance, which is unfortunately difficult to say without any other visual or literature evidence. There's also the possibility the distributions could represent manufacture sites. In the case of the island pan and the souvenir pans, that maybe they were made on the wall as souvenirs from people coming up to the wall or soldiers along the wall. The pans were made on the wall to then take away. Does the disc brooch evidence with the enamel show that there were manufacturer sites in the west? It's difficult to say because brooches are very small and portable items, and looking at clusters of distributions doesn't necessarily mean a manufacturer site, but that's something that could possibly be done with more metal analysis, glass analysis for any sites, and look at the objects found there. But again, it would be difficult to kind of pinpoint any manufacturer sites. One thing that I would like to do, and this is actually kind of a point for my next plans, is to maybe look at the distribution of enameled finger rings. If there was some significance on the design or the colours of enamel disc brooches, does that correlate to enameled finger rings? In 2009, a fines liaison officer, Adam Daubney, did a distribution analysis of the brooches, of the rings on the PS. At that time, there was only 72, and right now there's over 400. So there's a lot more data to look at. But unfortunately, it does show a massive gap in the northern frontier. Again, that might be due to the fact that we don't get as much metal detecting, but if this was a sort of frontier fashion to have a brooch, might you want a matching ring to go alongside, and it might be an idea to kind of have a look at that bit more to find any distributions of the designs and the styles and the colours, and do the rings match the brooches. Another thing these rings show up is that lots of these rings have lost the enamel, but they still show quite attractive designs. And in the case of the brooches, even if a brooch was old and had lost some of its enamel, it'd still be quite an attractive item to kind of hold. It would still show the design. It would still, if there was some significance or symbolism in the design, it would still be acceptable. It would still be okay to wear. This is something that I would like to look at a lot more, and to maybe see any correlations between the brooches and the rings to build up a larger jewellery suite, if there's any. Of course, there's also the fact that I've looked at sites in the north as well, but there were a lot more sites that I need to look at. So I would like to look at this a lot more. But if we're going back to the development of disc brooches, so from the enameled version, we're going into the gilded version, gilded type, said to date from mid-3rd to the 4th century. I did a analysis of, did a big sweep of as many sites as I could find, and found old gilded brooches from dated contexts. And I found that yes, they do appear later than the enamelled version, but again, appear in context right up to the end of the Roman period. They are mostly from military sites and temple or ritual sites. And I also considered the reasons why they might have been, what's the significance of them being in these types of sites. The gilded version is quite significant. It's got this unusual conical black glass central setting. And it's not really black glass, it's quite a black appearing glass. It's quite like green and blue when you hold it to the light. Was said to be a kind of imitation of the imperial brooch, but with the big difference of the central setting, and the black glass maybe has some sort of affiliation, connection to the mystery cults, or Mithras in particular. Because these appear on military sites quite a lot, perhaps maybe Mithras was quite a common military religion. Was this maybe part of a military dress? Were these brooches more for soldiers or connected to the military in some way? Looking at the distributions again, yes, from the distribution of sites, possibly more of a military aspect, but looking on the portable antiquity scheme, we get a much wider spread. So, and these are considered casual losses. Are these all from military men losing their brooches, or maybe were a lot more people, or did it have some sort of significance? Was there a lot more people wearing them? And these brooches are also part of a much wider jewellery suite. that was popular in the later period. Black glass or black appearing glass. It became popular 1st century AD, popular across the Roman Empire. It kind of had a bit of a decline, but then a big revival in the northwestern provinces at the mid-2nd to mid-3rd century AD, where we'll get, and by the 3rd century, we get a big increase in black jewellery, so jet and shale, or black appearing glass. These brooches, on the portable antiquity scheme, we've got quite a lot of these gilded brooches that have had earlier intaglios and gemstones fitted. So in the late Roman period, we've got a lot more repair and reuse. So new objects might have some the earlier gemstones fitted. Earlier objects are kind of repaired and reused in some way. So these later gilded brooches really fit into this late Roman jewellery suite. And I was kind of looking at maybe who else might have been using this type of brooch. And when we get into the later period, and we'll move into the early medieval period, this is where brooches become more gendered. So when I mentioned the military dress, we associate that Roman military dress, we associate that with crossbow brooches. Crossbow brooches are more male. We get a lot more, things start to become more gendered, and when we start moving into the early medieval period, brooches, especially disc brooches, become more of a female item. And this is based on furnished burials in the 5th to 6th century, early medieval grave goods. Females are found more commonly with 2 disc brooches, either shoulder, holding up a dress. And the fact that predominantly in female burials, these brooches are females, and were a female item. And I started looking at and trying to find connections between the Roman disc brooches, early medieval brooches, and one thing, one of the brooches that came up was this lovely one from Coventine as well, a Roman gilded disc brooch. It's lost its central black glass setting, but it's a bit of an unusual type. It's surrounded by 4 smaller black glass, smaller stones. It is a known Roman type. It has it was recorded by Hull and Macrath. The only other ones that I've come across is the one on the portable antiquity scheme in Cumbria, and another one in early medieval burial in Long Whitnam. And that led me on to the Roman brooches in early medieval burials. We do get both enameled and gilded brooches in early medieval burials. Actually, the most common brooch to find in early medieval burials is the gilded type, and it's said because that was one of the latest types that was around, but they weren't still in general circulation. It was ones that had been found, that were scavenged and reused by early medieval populations, and the ones that were found in early medieval burials more often than not have an iron pin, and that's the main difference between Roman and early medieval brooches. Early medieval are copper alloy plates, but they have an iron pin. The Roman ones, copper alloy plate, copper alloy pin. And if a Roman brooch has an iron pin, it's said to be early medieval people finding these, repairing them in early medieval technique. Iron pin is a chronological indicator, so it's said. But the fact that we find Roman brooches in early medieval burials, so 5th to 6th century, really that now extends my timeline. I can now use these as dated context for where Roman burials where Roman brooches are found. I'm trying to argue the case of Roman brooches being used for a very long time, and they're found in the latest Roman deposits, then actually they're found in the early medieval deposits. So that then extends the life and the object life of the Roman brooches right into the 5th century. And the typological of development of the iron pin, we'll get quite a lot of Romano-British disc brooches with some evidence of iron. And this is normally seen by corrosion on the back of the brooch from some part of the pin mechanism to be iron, leaves a lovely orange corrosion. And ones from the north, we'll find there's one from Maryport, which has been burned, so possibly in the cremation cemetery there. Another one from County Durham, and another one from the gilded wheel brooch. That wasn't one of the types that I really focused on, but the wheel brooches are really, really small and really quite rare. Possibly military association, date to the 34th century. But the one that I see in from Chester's, it has some iron corrosion on the back. And I've just showed a picture of a similar one from the Portable Antiquities scheme, which shows the iron corrosion on the back. And we get quite a lot on the Portable Antiquities scheme, both enameled versions and gilded versions of Roman brooches with iron corrosion on the back. Does this mean that they were repaired in the early medieval period with iron pins? I don't think so. I would like to find a Roman brooch with an iron pin in a securely dated Roman context to say that iron was used much earlier than thought, and iron couldn't be used as a chronological indicator, but I haven't found that. And it was following the last talk I gave, Justine Bailey pointed out that Roman brooches have iron access pins, basically on the pin mechanism on the back, where the pin meets the plate, the access pin to make the pin work. Sometimes it's made of iron. Yes, that's absolutely correct. But it's only certain brooches, which is more common than not, to have this iron pin. The Hod Hill brooch has an iron access pin. On the Portable Antiquities scheme, the recording document hasn't been written for the disc brooches yet. Been written for all the other types of brooches, but I think it's probably a bit difficult to write this disc brooch one just because of the minefield of the typology. But maybe because of the frequency I found disc brooches with iron on the back, so iron access pin, maybe it's a common characteristic to have disc brooches, which is copper alloy with a copper alloy pin, but it's got the iron access pin. So when the Portable Antiquities scheme writes that recording document, maybe they can include that. I would like to get more, to go out and see more brooches and collections to see if actually there are more iron corrosion on the back, especially in like older brooch reports. It isn't always recorded if there is that corrosion on the back, so I would like to look at that more. So just to conclude, the development of Romano-British disc brooches, what can that tell us? Well, chronologically, I've showed you get enameled, which are dated generally the 2nd century, that you could get them in the latest Roman deposit. can also get the Roman gilded ones dated the 3rd to 4th century in the latest Roman deposits, but you do get them in early medieval burials, so that can then extend the object life well into the early medieval period. These are portable and durable objects, and they're pretty and attractive, and they could be used for a very long time, whether they are being worn or whether they're created for ritual purposes, whether they're passed on just because of the value or decoration. They are objects that can have a long use life. There may be some significance in the designs of the Roman ones, of the enameled ones and the gilded ones. If they were used for that long time, that the meanings change and significance change. If there were regional preferences, that could also change. Other regions taking on different fashions. Unfortunately, it is difficult to pinpoint. But if with the similarities to the medieval, does that then show that these attractive designs still did continue? And the typological developments, the use of iron, could it be used as a chronological indicator? Is the use of iron only a early medieval characteristic, or maybe we should start adding that into the descriptions and the common characteristics of Roman brooches, as yes, you can, there was the use of iron on Roman brooches. Really, I need more context dates to build up the case for the long use and long circulation of Roman brooches. Actually, the Roman Finds Group has really kindly and generously funded a little project of mine for once collections and sites are open again. I would like to go back out and find some more, and hopefully I can come back to you with an updated talk. Thank you very much, and this is my email address, because I would please welcome any questions and any advice that you can give. So thank you.